I was 19 when this happened, and even now I still catch myself checking every closet before I go to bed. My parents had driven to North Carolina for my aunt's surgery. They were only supposed to be gone for 4 days, and since I had classes and a part-time job, I stayed home by myself. I'd always wanted the house to myself. No one asking where I was going. No one complaining that I stayed up too late playing games or watching movies. The first day was exactly what I imagined. I ordered pizza, left dirty dishes in the sink, and watched movies until almost 2 in the morning. Before going upstairs, I made sure every door was locked. I even checked the back sliding door twice because our neighborhood backed up to a wooded area. I slept better than I expected. The next morning, I noticed the pizza box was folded neatly and sitting inside the recycling bin. I stopped for a second. I remembered leaving it on the kitchen counter because I was too lazy to throw it away. I figured maybe I had cleaned up before bed and simply forgotten. It wasn't impossible. I wasn't fully awake yet, so I shrugged it off and left for work. That night, I came home around 9. Everything looked normal. I microwaved leftovers, played video games for an hour, then went upstairs. Halfway through brushing my teeth, I realized the bathroom trash can was empty. I knew I'd thrown tissues in there earlier that morning. Again, I blamed myself. Maybe I had emptied it before work. Maybe. It felt strange, but not enough to worry about. The third morning was when something happened that I couldn't explain. I keep my car keys in a small ceramic bowl beside the front door. Every single day. When I woke up, the keys were sitting on the kitchen table. Not dropped, not forgotten. Placed carefully in the exact center of the table. I stared at them for a long time. I even checked my pockets and backpack, trying to convince myself I'd done it. Nothing. The memory just wasn't there. I laughed it off, grabbed the keys, and headed to class. But the thought stayed with me all day. That evening I called my mom. "Have you ever done something without remembering it?" She laughed. "You mean like putting the milk in the pantry?" "Yeah, happens all the time." That answer made me feel better. Until I got home. The television in the living room was on. Chicken, not loud. Muted. Displaying a local weather channel. I was positive I'd turned it off before leaving. The remote sat neatly on the coffee table. I picked it up. The batteries were warm. Someone had been using it recently. I searched the whole house. Closets. Bathrooms. Garage. Nothing. Every window was locked. Every door was still dead-bolted. I actually started wondering if I was dealing with stress. Maybe being alone was getting to me. I decided to stop overthinking everything. That lasted less than a day. The next afternoon, I opened the refrigerator and noticed one bottle of water missing. Not unusual. Except I hadn't been drinking bottled water. I'd been filling a reusable bottle from the fridge dispenser all week. I counted again. One missing. Then I noticed something else. One slice of turkey was gone from the package. Just one. Who steals one slice? I checked the expiration date because I honestly wondered if I had sleepwalked and made myself a sandwich. I almost laughed at how ridiculous I sounded. That night I locked my bedroom door. Not because I believed someone was inside, because I wanted to prove to myself that I was being irrational. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up needing the bathroom. The hallway was completely dark. As soon as I opened my bedroom door, I smelled coffee. Fresh coffee. Strong enough that it had to be brewing recently. I froze. I don't drink coffee. Neither of my parents had been home for 3 days. I walked downstairs one step at a time. The kitchen lights were off. The coffee maker sat on the counter. The glass pot was warm. Half full. I stared at it without moving. Someone had made coffee inside my house while I was asleep. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I could find and called 911. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. They searched every room. The attic. The crawl space. The backyard. Nothing. One officer looked at me and smiled politely. "You're probably just stressed from being here alone." I nodded because I didn't want to argue. But before leaving, the older officer asked one question. "Anyone else ever have a key?" "My uncle used to." "Still does?" "I don't think so. He told me to change the locks anyway." After they left, I felt embarrassed. like I'd wasted everyone's time. I locked every door again. Then I sat on the couch trying to relax. About 30 minutes later, I heard a single sound, a soft click. Upstairs, not loud, like someone gently closing a bedroom door. Every hair on my arms stood up. The police had just searched the entire house. I grabbed the knife again and slowly climbed the stairs. The hallway was empty. Every bedroom door was open. Except the guest room. It was closed. I never closed that door. I stood outside listening. Nothing. I pushed it open. Empty. Closet open. Window locked. No one there. Then I heard another sound. Behind me. 3 footsteps. Slow. Directly above my head. I looked up at the ceiling. The attic. I hadn't even remembered we had attic access in the upstairs hallway. The folding ladder was pulled down about 2 inches. Barely noticeable. I was positive it had been completely shut earlier. I backed away and called the police again. This time, they arrived with 2 additional officers. One climbed into the attic. Less than 10 seconds later, he yelled, "We've got movement." Everything happened at once. Shouting. Running. Heavy footsteps. Someone crashed through the insulation farther back. I heard another officer yell that someone was trying to get onto the roof. They caught him before he made it outside. He wasn't wearing shoes. He looked filthy. His beard reached halfway down his chest. He couldn't have been older than 40. I expected the officers to drag him out immediately. Instead, they kept asking him the same question. "Is anyone else up here?" He refused to answer. My stomach dropped. Another officer disappeared farther into the attic. A minute later, he came back carrying a backpack. Then another. Then blankets. Food wrappers. Water bottles. There was a sleeping area built between the rafters where nobody standing in the attic entrance could see it. The man had been living above our bedrooms. The officer looked at me. "How long have your parents been gone?" "3 days. He exchanged a glance with another officer. "I don't think that's when he moved in." They believed he'd been there for weeks, maybe longer. I couldn't even process it. He had been above us while we watched television, while we ate dinner, while we slept. Back downstairs, they questioned him in the patrol car. One detective eventually came over. "You said food was disappearing?" I nodded. He admitted taking small amounts so nobody would notice. "What about the coffee? He said he thought you'd already left for work." I felt sick. The detective wasn't finished. He also admitted coming downstairs every night after you went to sleep. I couldn't speak. He watched television. My legs actually gave out. The detective caught my arm before I fell. I asked the question that had been bothering me since they found him. If he was hiding, why close the guest room door? The detective looked back toward the patrol car. He says he didn't. I stared at him. What? He claims someone else closed it. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was impossible. There isn't anyone else. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked another officer something quietly. The officers searched the attic again, much more thoroughly this time. About 20 minutes later, one of them came down carrying another backpack. Smaller than the first, different color. Inside were fresh clothes, new bottled water, a flashlight, and food with expiration dates from only a few days earlier. The detective's expression changed immediately. That isn't his. The man they arrested insisted he'd never seen that backpack before. He swore he'd been alone the entire time. They searched until sunrise. No second person. No fingerprints they could identify. Nothing. My parents came home that afternoon. We moved into a hotel the same night. Eventually, we sold the house. I never went back inside. About 8 months later, I received a call from one of our old neighbors. The new family had only lived there for 3 weeks. They packed everything into a moving truck over a single weekend and left without telling anyone why. The house sat empty after that. Sometimes, when I think about everything, I can explain almost all of it. The missing food, the coffee, the television, the keys, the man in the attic. What I still can't explain is what happened after he was arrested. Because while the police were interviewing him in the driveway, I was sitting in the back of an ambulance trying to calm down. From where I was sitting, I had a clear view of the second-floor guest room window. I remember looking up because the curtain moved. I assumed it was one of the officers checking the room again. Then someone pulled the curtain back just enough for me to see a face. Not the man they had arrested. This person looked younger, clean-shaven, watching me without moving. The curtain closed again before I could yell. The police searched the house one last time. They found no one. I've never told anyone that part except my parents, because I know how it sounds. But every now and then I think about that second backpack. Enough food for one person. Fresh clothes and a different size. And a face at the window that disappeared before anyone else could see it. That's the part that still keeps me awake. The detective kept the second backpack. I remember watching him carry it to his car while another officer questioned the man they'd arrested. The guy looked exhausted. He barely spoke above a whisper. Every answer he gave sounded like someone who'd already accepted that his life was over. I couldn't stop staring at him. He didn't look dangerous. He looked terrified. At one point he glanced toward the house, then quickly looked away again. The detective noticed. "What is it?" The man hesitated. Finally he said, "Don't leave him in there." The detective frowned. "Him?" The man shook his head almost immediately. I didn't say anything. They asked him again. He refused to speak. That was the last time I ever saw him. The police eventually left after sunrise. My parents drove home early the next morning, and before I could even explain everything, my mom hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Neither of them wanted to spend another night in that house. We packed clothes into suitcases, grabbed important documents, and checked into a hotel less than an hour later. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, the detective called. He wanted me to come to the station. When I got there, he closed the office door before speaking. We went through everything in the attic. I nodded. The man admitted he'd been living there for almost 6 weeks. That made my stomach turn. Forensics found his fingerprints everywhere. So, that's it? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid several printed photographs across the desk. They showed the hidden sleeping area. Blankets. Food wrappers. Empty water bottles. A flashlight. Then another picture. The second backpack. Inside were clothes that were several sizes smaller than the arrested man's. Children's granola bars. A newer flashlight. A phone charger that didn't fit any phone we found on him. These weren't his? We're certain. I stared at the photographs. Did you find fingerprints? He leaned back in his chair. None. How is that possible? They'd all been wiped clean. That answer bothered me more than if they'd actually found fingerprints. Someone had taken the time to erase them. Before leaving. Or after. I asked the detective the question that had been running through my head since that night. Do you think there was another person? He looked toward the office window before answering. I think someone wanted us to believe there wasn't. That wasn't the answer I expected. Before I left, he told me something else. We're changing the locks before your family returns for the rest of your belongings. My dad already hired someone. I know, he paused. I'd still appreciate it if you didn't go there alone. I promised him I wouldn't. Unfortunately, that promise didn't last very long. A week later, my parents were both at work. I realized I'd left one of my college textbooks in my bedroom closet. Classes started the next morning. The house was only 15 minutes away. I told myself I'd be inside for 5 minutes. No more. The neighborhood looked completely normal. Kids were riding bicycles. Someone was mowing their lawn. The mailbox still had our family name on it. Standing in the driveway, I actually felt stupid for being nervous. I unlocked the front door. The house smelled stale, like it had been closed up too long. Everything was exactly where we'd left it. I hurried upstairs, grabbed my backpack, opened the closet, found the textbook. Done. I was about to leave when I heard a soft thump overhead. The attic. I froze. Then I laughed at myself. Probably a squirrel. Or the house settling. I started walking again. Another sound. This time, it wasn't above me. It came from downstairs, a cabinet closing. Slowly, I stopped breathing. The sound was unmistakable, not loud. Just deliberate. I stood perfectly still, listening. Silence. After almost a full minute, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. I walked into the hallway. That's when I noticed something. The attic ladder wasn't completely closed. There was a gap, only an inch or two. Exactly like the night the police found the man. I backed away without taking my eyes off it. My phone buzzed. The sudden vibration nearly made me jump out of my skin. It was my mom asking if I'd found my book. I typed one word. Yes. Before I could send it, something slid through the opening in the attic hatch. Just a tiny piece of folded white paper. It drifted to the hallway floor. No footsteps, no voices. Nothing else. Every instinct told me to run. Instead, I stared at that piece of paper for several seconds. Then I picked it up. It was folded twice. Inside, written in block letters with a black marker, were 6 words. You should not have come back. I didn't think. I ran. I don't remember locking the front door. I don't remember getting into my car. I only remember looking in the rearview mirror as I backed into the street. Someone was standing behind the upstairs guest room curtain, completely still, watching me leave. I called 911 before I reached the end of the block. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the entire house. Again, nothing. No one. The attic was empty. No fresh food. No blankets. No backpacks. Just dust. The detective met me outside afterward. I handed him the note. He looked at it for a long time. Then he asked a question that caught me off guard. Did you touch this? I picked it up. He sighed. Then any fingerprints are probably ruined. I apologized. He shook his head. I probably would have done the same. As I got into my car, he stopped me one last time. If anyone asks, I looked back. Don't tell people exactly where that note came from. Why? He glanced toward the attic window. Because whoever wrote it wanted you to know they were still inside. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized something much worse. The note hadn't been dusty. It was perfectly clean. Like it had been written only minutes before I walked into the house. The detective took the note with him. That was the last official update I ever got. A few weeks later, I called to ask if they found anything on it. He told me the handwriting didn't match the man they'd arrested. There weren't any usable fingerprints, no DNA worth testing, and no security camera footage from the neighborhood that showed anyone entering or leaving the property. It was as if the note had simply appeared. Life eventually started moving again. My parents sold the house before the end of the year. They didn't make much money on it, but none of us cared anymore. We just wanted it gone. I tried doing the same. I transferred to another apartment closer to campus, buried myself in work, and stopped talking about what had happened. For a while, it actually worked. Then, almost 8 months later, I got a phone call from Mrs. Palmer. She had lived across the street from us for as long as I could remember. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. Honey, she said after I picked up, I thought you should know. The family that bought your old house moved out. I frowned. They just bought it. I know. What happened? They packed everything yesterday. Did they say why? No. Did anything happen? There was a long pause. Then she quietly said, The husband asked me if your family ever had problems with someone getting into the house. My chest tightened. What did you tell him? I said I didn't know anything. I thanked her for calling, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the neighborhood. I told myself I wasn't going to stop. Just drive by, see that another family was living there. Prove to myself it was over. The moving truck was gone. The driveway was empty. A for sale sign stood in the front yard. The house looked exactly the same. Fresh paint. Trimmed bushes. Closed blinds. It could have been any ordinary home. I don't know why I slowed down. Maybe I wanted proof that everything I'd gone through had an explanation. As I rolled past, I looked up at the second floor. The guest room curtain moved, very slightly. Just enough to reveal part of the window. Someone was standing there. Not waving. Not hiding. Just watching the street. I couldn't make out a face. Only the outline of a person. I kept driving. I didn't call the police. I didn't stop. I told myself it was probably a realtor, a contractor, anyone. But I knew the house was supposed to be empty. About a month after that, the detective called me out of nowhere. He had retired. He said he was cleaning out old files and came across my case. There was something I never told you. I didn't say anything. I didn't think it would help at the time. What is it? The man we arrested. I waited. He never admitted breaking into your house. I frowned. What do you mean? He admitted living in the attic. Isn't that the same thing? No. The detective's voice became quieter. He claimed he found the attic already occupied. I felt my stomach drop. He said he'd been sleeping under a bridge for weeks. One rainy night, he noticed the attic access panel over your garage had been left unsecured during some roof work. He climbed inside because he needed somewhere dry. Then why stay? He told us someone else was already living there. I couldn't speak. We thought he was lying. What did he say about the other person? He only saw him twice. Twice? The first time, he woke up and found someone sitting at the opposite end of the attic in complete darkness. I gripped my phone tighter. He said neither of them spoke. What happened? The other man stood up, climbed down into the house, and came back with food. My mouth went dry. The second time, he woke up because someone whispered, "They're awake." I looked around my apartment without realizing I was doing it. The man said when he opened his eyes, the other person was already crawling deeper into the insulation where nobody could reach him. And you didn't believe him? No. The detective sighed. But then we found that second backpack. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he said, "I've worked a lot of burglaries. Home invasions, squatters. This one never made sense. Why are you telling me now?" "Because I received another phone call last week." "From who?" "The realtor handling your old house." I closed my eyes. What happened? He wanted to know if I remembered the case. Why? During renovations, workers removed part of the attic floor. I could hear papers moving on his desk. They found another space. I opened my eyes. What kind of space? A narrow compartment between two roof beams. Was anyone in it? No. Then what? They found old blankets. I didn't answer. They also found canned food. My breathing slowed. And? The detective's voice almost disappeared. They found a folding lawn chair. I pictured it immediately. Someone sitting in complete silence. Hidden. Watching. Waiting. There was one more thing. I almost didn't ask. What? A small hole had been drilled through the wood. I frowned. What for? It lined up perfectly with the air vent over your bedroom. I didn't know what to say. The detective did. Whoever stayed there could hear almost everything happening downstairs. He paused, and if they looked through that hole, I finished the sentence for him. They could watch us. Yes. That conversation happened almost 3 years ago. I haven't heard anything else about the house since. Maybe they finally sealed the attic. Maybe they tore the place down. Maybe whoever was there left long before anyone realized. I honestly don't know. What I do know is this. When I lived there, I thought the scariest part was learning that someone had been secretly sharing our home. I was wrong. The scariest part was realizing the man the police arrested may have been hiding from someone he couldn't identify either. Because every strange thing that happened in our house, the missing food, the coffee, the television, the note, the face in the guest room window, none of it could ever be tied to him. And if that's true, then I was never alone in that house. Neither was he. I was 22 when this happened. My parents had gone to Ohio for almost a week after my sister had her first baby. They asked if I wanted to come, but I had classes and a weekend shift at the hardware store, so I stayed behind. I wasn't worried about being alone. I'd spent plenty of nights by myself before, and our neighborhood was about as quiet as they come. The first night felt normal. I ordered takeout, watched a baseball game, locked every door before bed, and stayed up scrolling through my phone. Just after midnight, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Don't answer your back door tonight." I stared at it for a second, then laughed. I figured someone had the wrong number, or it was one of those random spam messages people sometimes get. I didn't reply. About 20 minutes later, There were 3 slow knocks on the back door. Not loud. Just 3 evenly spaced knocks. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Then another 3 knocks. I walked into the kitchen and looked through the glass door. The backyard was empty. The motion light hadn't even turned on. I kept looking for another minute before locking the door again and heading upstairs. The next morning, I noticed muddy footprints on the concrete patio. They came from the fence and stopped right in front of the back door. There weren't any footprints leading away. I crouched down, trying to make sense of it. Maybe the rain had washed them away. It sounded reasonable enough, so I stopped thinking about it. The second night, another text arrived. "Close your upstairs curtains before dark." This time I answered, "Who is this?" No reply. A minute later, another message appeared. "Please, just trust me." I don't know why, but I closed every upstairs curtain before the sun went down. Around 10 that night, I heard a metallic scraping sound outside. It reminded me of someone dragging a ladder across concrete. I carefully pulled back the edge of my bedroom curtain. A man was climbing down from the edge of my roof carrying an aluminum ladder. He wore a dark baseball cap, jeans, and a gray jacket. He never looked toward my window. He calmly loaded the ladder into an older white pickup truck parked across the street and drove away. I called the police immediately. They searched the neighborhood but never found the truck. One officer asked why I hadn't called when I first heard the ladder. I almost told him about the text messages. Instead, I just shrugged and said I wasn't sure what I'd heard. The third night, I found myself waiting for another warning. I hated admitting it, but I wanted the message to arrive. At almost 11, my phone buzzed. "Leave your hallway light on tonight." That one made no sense. Still, after everything that had happened, I wasn't about to ignore it. I left the upstairs hallway light on and locked myself in my bedroom. A little after 1 in the morning, I woke up to a sound downstairs. Footsteps. They're slow, careful. Whoever it was wasn't trying to make noise. I grabbed the baseball bat beside my bed and called 911. The dispatcher told me to stay in my room until officers arrived. The footsteps crossed the living room. Then the kitchen. Then they reached the staircase. Each step sounded louder than the last. I could hear my own heartbeat. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. The dispatcher whispered, "Can you still hear them?" Yes. Neither of us spoke. For what felt like forever, there wasn't a single sound. Then the footsteps slowly moved away. Back down the hallway. Down the stairs. A moment later, I heard the front door open. Then close. The police arrived less than 5 minutes later. They searched every room, every closet, and even the backyard. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been damaged. One officer checked the back door before leaving. He looked at me. "This wasn't forced open." "What do you mean?" "It was unlocked from the inside. I knew I'd locked it before going to bed." I remembered checking it twice. The next morning, I replaced every lock on the house and installed a security camera facing the driveway. I wasn't taking any more chances. That night, the text came earlier than usual. "Watch your camera at 11:23. At exactly 11:23, I opened the camera app. The driveway was empty. I almost closed it. Then someone walked across the edge of the screen. A man wearing a gray hoodie moved quietly past my driveway and disappeared into the darkness. Less than 30 seconds later, another man stepped into view from the opposite direction. He stopped where the first man had been standing. He looked around for several seconds before walking away. The two men had missed each other by less than half a minute. Whoever had sent the text knew they would both be there. The next afternoon, I went straight to the police station. The detective looked through the messages on my phone before asking for the number. A few minutes later, he looked back at me with a confused expression. "That's not possible." "What isn't?" "This number belonged to a prepaid phone." "So?" "It was recovered almost 6 months ago." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means nobody should have been sending messages from it. The phone company traced the signal anyway. It had come from less than 200 feet behind my house. There was only one building there. An abandoned home that had been empty for years. The police searched it that evening. Inside, they found blankets, canned food, empty water bottles, and signs that someone had been living there recently. Whoever it was had disappeared before they arrived. They never identified the person. My parents came home the following day, and the messages stopped as suddenly as they had started. Almost a year later, I ran into the woman who had lived next door to us for over 20 years. When I mentioned the abandoned house, she smiled. I used to see an older man sitting on the back porch late at night. I asked what he looked like. She described the same gray jacket and dark baseball cap I'd seen the man wearing as he climbed off my roof. Then she frowned. Of course, it couldn't have been him. Why not? Because he passed away years before you moved into the neighborhood. I never told her about the text messages. I never told her about the man on my roof. Some things are easier to leave alone. But every now and then, usually when I'm locking my back door before bed, I think about those 3 nights. Whoever sent those messages knew exactly where I was. They knew someone was watching my house. And, for reasons I'll probably never understand, they decided to warn me instead of introducing themselves.